All right, good morning, everybody. We're here for a mandatory pre-bid for ITB-24-01-EN, and it's titled Estero Island Beach Nourishment and Hurricane Recovery Project. All proposals will be due on December 21st, 2023. Before you all leave, if you haven't signed in on these sign-in sheets, I would appreciate you to do that. And this is our one and only microphone that's picking up any questions you may have, so just make sure you speak up when you, so we're sure to capture everything for you. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chad Schutz. He's our project manager for the project, and then you can turn it to Michael.
Chad Schutz, project manager for the renourishment and hurricane recovery. A lot going on, and I will leave it in the very capable hands of Michael Poff, who is our engineer of record.
Good morning, everybody. For those of you who have worked with me and our company, we're based here in Southwest Florida, Coastal Engineering Consultants. Our office is in Bonita Springs. We do work around the Gulf. We've done a lot of work in Southwest Florida from basically Tampa South, and we do a lot of work in Louisiana on their Maryland projects. So it's my privilege to be representing the town for the project. We're the design engineer of record. We are the permitting lead as well, and we'll be the construction management team for the project as well. And so you'll get to know me and our staff very closely as we all work together to successfully bring this project home for the town. The original Estero Island project was the North Beach Fill segment only, from Crescent Beach Park north. It was done in the 2011 timeframe. Florida Dredge and Dock was the dredge company, and they pumped 400,000 yards out of the nearshore bar area, same bar area we're going to be using. The town has expanded the project limits based upon erosion that occurred since the original project, and we now extend the project down south to Monument R198, Lanark Avenue. Then there's a gap in the project, primarily because there are beachfront property owners who do not want the erosion control line established along their property, and there's also a very, very wide beach because those buildings are set back a considerable distance from the shoreline. So there's a gap in the beach fill limits, and we do not have access across their private property. So that's a no work zone in that section in the center of the island. And then we have the south beach fill in the very south end. Based upon coastal processes, those properties that had 150 feet of beach in 2011 now have anywhere from 0 to 25 feet of beach. It's very narrow. One property was able to permit a seawall because of the significant erosion that's occurred. And of course, Hurricane Ian, if you're not familiar with Hurricane Ian, it devastated this entire community in September of 2022. And so we are in major recovery mode. That's why we're in a hotel. Town Hall was completely destroyed, as were many buildings on Fort Myers Beach. And so the focus of this project, of course, is to get the beach restored for all of the wonderful reasons, for recreation, for tourism, for sea turtles, shorebirds, et cetera, et cetera. With that said, the town has already begun their recovery through a FEMA grant for the emergency berm, if you're familiar with that term. FEMA has a program for public assistance where they pay to bring sand on the beach and build a 6 cubic yard per foot, basically a little berm, little dune along the length of the shoreline that qualifies. The majority of that work is complete and will be completed before you start working. With that said, there were several sections that did not qualify for FEMA funding, and there are still areas on the town's shoreline up to the road that have scour holes, scour pits. And so the town will be bidding a separate truck haul project to fill in these small areas. We're not going to make the hydraulic dredge company try to fill in a 30-foot long by 4-foot wide by 2-foot deep scour hole. Obviously, that would be very difficult with your equipment. And many of these areas are actually outside your limits, or they're landward of the emergency berm. So there will be a truck haul project going on, but I'd say close to 75% to 80% of the work for that project is completely outside of your work area because it's in sections that are outside the fill limits. So keep an eye on that. I would suggest we probably will have to advertise that sometime later this week, Chad, or next week. Is that the goal for the truck haul project?
As soon as possible, yes.
So keep an eye on it. We're asking both the truck haul project contractors and the dredge contractors to just work cooperatively together. There is no place where you're placing fill over the same points. We're not going to have you use the same construction access and staging areas. You'll have separate construction access and staging areas. But there is other work going on the beach at the same time. Their volume is about 80,000 yards. Yours is well over 1 million. So obviously there's a big difference. So just in terms of the scale and magnitude of the work. So the bid documents are available online. Please make sure you've downloaded all of the bid documents, and the first addendum's already been issued based on questions received and the fact that I forgot to give Chad the geotechnical and geophysical data when we loaded the bid documents the first time. So there's the ITB, that's the base bid document. There are the technical specs. We made a switch at the last minute, so there were 2 technical specs first posted. One ended in the date of 10/31. One ended in a date of 10/30. Ignore the one that ends in 10/30. And that is clarified in the addendum. Use those technical specs that have a file name that end in 10/31. There was a small change to add a dune component on Bowditch Park added to the documents between October 30th and October 31st. Obviously the contract plans, the permits. There is an original DEP permit. There is a first modification to the DEP permit. We're applying for a second modification to fine-tune some things. That's not available at this time, so if and when we get it, we'll issue an addendum to that effect. There is a sediment quality assurance, quality control plan. That's part of the state permit that's on the website. There is the Corps of Engineers permit, and there is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife biological opinion for this project. There's the state programmatic biological opinion. There's the piping plover biological opinion. There's the National Marine Fisheries Service biological opinion for this project. And there's the Gulf Regional biological opinion for all of work in the Gulf of Mexico. We've also applied for an incidental take permit from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission with respect to shorebirds. And as soon as we get that, we'll provide that in an addendum as well, dealing with what's called an incidental take, just like we have with sea turtles and the biological opinion for sea turtles. The state of Florida now has a process for shorebirds. Then we posted the geophysical and geotechnical data. The original surveys were done in the early 2000s for that project. The vibrocores were done at that time. There's been no new vibrocoring done since that time. However, we did redo the geophysical surveys. There were quite a few anomalies in the bar area that they had these huge cutouts of the bar area. It took a lot of volume out of the bar area. So we went and did a new detailed geophysical survey, plus we also had to map the corridors from North Beach fill to the bar area and from the South Beach fill to the bar area. So they've all been culturally cleared, and we were able to clear many of the anomalies in the bar area and open up for additional sand for the project. When you read the permits, you also see that there is an offshore bar area out on the outer continental shelf. Because we go for 15-year permits with multiple renourishments, the town has included that bar area, but that's next time we see it in 8 years, we'll be using that bar area. So the offshore bar area is not applicable to the current project. We're going to use the nearshore bar area, the shoal system of Matanzas Pass. So that's kind of the outline of the bid documents. There are bid forms. You're all very familiar with filling out bid forms. This is the town. You probably have not, unless you're Florida Dredge and Dock or competed for that project in 2011, you probably have not filled out the town's bid documents and the bid forms, so please pay specific attention to those. There are minimum bidder qualifications. We will require you to prove to us and demonstrate in your bid through your submittal of your qualifications that you have the ability to pump coarse grain sand from an ebb shoal bar area over 6 miles to a beach and have placed beach fill. This is not a job for any rookies. You have to put in 3 projects that demonstrate that experience. And so it's a shallow bar area in a nearshore environment, over 6 miles of pumping, and you're going to have a mixture of sand and coarse grain to medium to some pockets of fine. You're going to have pockets of shell. and shell hash. It's an ebb shoal bar in Southwest Florida. So you're going to find it all. And so please pay attention to that. When you give us your references, don't make me have to find their email addresses and their phone numbers. Please provide all the current contact information. Call your references and make sure everything that you give me is still applicable so I can reach them, because we are going to have to verify references for the project. Make it easy on us, and it will only help your stance as far as trying to get the bids. In the technical specifications, as I mentioned, there's the north beach fill. We call it the central beach fill, for lack of a better term, because we had this original nourishment section. But the north and central beach fill is one continuous beach fill. Starts at Bowditch Point and heads down to Lanark Avenue. Within that beach fill, we do have some no work zones because we do have some private property owners who did not sign their construction easements. We're continuing to try to get some of those easements, but what's shown on the plans are cutouts in the beach fill template. And we're going to lower the beach fill, seaward of those properties, so we don't create a valley between the pumped sand and the uplands, or in many places the emergency berm. So there's going to be some varying grades on your beach fill construction compared to the old Corps of Engineers completely flat berm for 100 feet, and you go 1 on 10 into the Gulf. So pay attention to the cross sections, because there are going to be some variable grades and elevation changes along the beach fill template. We have 3 access and staging points. Lee County has a park at Bowditch Point. We can use that for access. There is Newton Park, which is a town beach park. And then there is on the south end, there's a vacant lot. One property owner has volunteered their lot to the town to use, completely vacant. It's a direct shot from Estero Boulevard out to the beach. And they're shown on the plans. If you choose to arrange for additional accesses, that's completely up to you. You're welcome to do that. We'll require you to provide us with the agreement that you have with that private property owner. Obviously, before you leave, you're going to have to clean up the lot and make sure that the property owner and you have reached an accord that the lot has been restored to conditions by which they had given it to you. We have an extremely tight environmental window on the very south end of the project because we're adjacent to a bird nesting, historical bird nesting sanctuary, critical wildlife area. So you must start the project on the very south end and get that southern 2,000 feet pumped in. That is first and foremost. Then you finish the rest of the south beach fill. Then you're going to flip your pipe and do the north section to central section. So you have to go south first. We want to get away from that bird area as quickly as possible. So it's not going to be easy because we have a seawall along one section, but your access on the south end will allow you to get into the project area. So take a look at that. I encourage you while you're here in town to go look at that access, look at that lot. We gave the address so you can dial it into your GPS, go look at it. And if you have any questions about that, please submit them in writing. So let me also say, any questions that you have that you ask of us today, we will do our very best to answer them here. It is a mandatory pre-bid, but we want you to submit them in writing so we can formally get them on the record in an addendum, so it's part of the official contract document. So we don't have to go back and listen to this tape and try to figure out what was said and what was answered. So put your questions in writing. I'm going to take notes as you ask your questions and do our best to capture those as well and put them in the addendum. Do not call me, do not email me, do not text me, do not stop by my house. Unless you want to have a cocktail or a bourbon, that's fine, but I'm not going to answer questions about the project to be respectful of the bid process. All the information should be directed to, is it Chad or to you, Amy?
It'll come in to me, but in the bids plural, at fmbgov.com, and that's listed in the documents too.
Thank you.
And writing the questions is perfect because I don't understand what y'all are talking about. So if I try and decipher the notes.
As I mentioned, the town is building this emergency berm. We're going to use state money to build some more of the berm. Ultimately, it's going to get integrated into the project as a dune. There is going to be a little bit of dune construction on Bowditch Point up at the county park. And so we did not draw that in cross-section. But basically, if you look on the plans, there is some areas in the north section that you're going to build dune. And so that's same typical section will get carried north for And when we do the pre-construction surveys, of course, we'll have templates at every 100 feet that we'll provide to you. We'll be doing the surveying for the town for pay quantities. You're welcome to do your own independent surveying, but we have licensed professional surveyors. We do our own surveying in-house, and so we'll do the pre- and post-construction surveys for pay. If you've not worked with us before, we have I don't think it's unique, but we want you to fill the majority of the design template, 95% of the design template. We give tolerances because we know that a lot of times that toe is slope, you just can't fill it, and you guys end up having to try to overfill the design template to try to fill the toe. And so we provide a construction tolerance that allows you, and we even put a slope tolerance that allows you to achieve 100% of the design by using the tolerance to get there. So every 1,000-foot acceptance section will have a volume. You got to get 95% of that volume using the tolerance, but we cannot exceed the bid quantities. And so we don't want you overbuilding the tolerances, trying to capture every grain. The goal is to achieve that design template. That's the goal of the project. Shorebirds. So we have a lot of activity, especially on the south end. There's also an area just north of the South Beachville that has been very active this particular season because with all of the destruction, there was no activity, there was no life, there was no disturbance, so the birds found a new area to set up shop and nest this particular season, and they like to come back to the same spots. And so just north of the South Beachville, we also have seen activity. So we are suggesting in the bid documents that you get an approved environmental shorebird monitor or monitors to assist you with passive abatement. We give some opportunity, we list some of the measures, flagging, ribbing, human disturbance. I've seen contractors pay college kids to drive UTVs in a lawnmower pattern all day long in an area so they don't have bird nesting. I've seen contractors put 1,000 streamers and flagging and ribbons. I have seen them put coyote decoys and other peregrine falcon decoys on posts to try to scare away the birds. So we're not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but we have given you the methods. They have to be passive, so there can't be intentional chasing of birds and attacking birds. You cannot do that. You cannot have cannons shooting off. You cannot have shotguns shooting off. Those are not considered passive. And so be prepared on the South Beachville, and also Bowditch Point. There has been a little bit of nesting in the past. It's hit or miss. So be aware, Bowditch Point is another area. Did I miss any, Chad, of the historical nesting areas?
Bowditch, 6,000 block, all through the CWA and Carlos Point, but
they won't be down at Carlos Point. So Bowditch Point, 6,000 block is that area I said just north of the South Beachville. And then Carlos Point, Islands End is the south end. We're going to be working very close to that critical wildlife area. So, what else did I want to make sure I covered? Most likely you'll end up working into sea turtle nesting season, which begins, some provisions begin on April 15th, others begin on May 1st. If you've worked in Florida, you should be accustomed to those. You have to do certain shielding on your lights. You have to maintain the minimal amount of equipment on the beach. Your pipeline has to be as far landward as practicable. There's a whole suite of best management practices that are in the biological opinion that you have to abide by once those dates are triggered. And then your dredge quality management, it's not necessarily the federal standard, but the state of Florida has a requirement in the sediment QA/QC plan. We're going to have to get your cutter head records, your plots, and your elevation data of your cutter head. The lowest point on the cutter head has to be provided on a daily basis. And we do a QA/QC check. That's part of our responsibility and the town's responsibility. So they want us to do, all of us, the contractor, the town, and we, the consultant, all have a responsibility for dredge quality management. So do not go willy-nilly in the bar area. Below the bottom of the cut, there is silty material. If you dig too deep, you could hit rock. So take a look at the borings that are in the plans and pay attention to that. So we do not want you going below the bottom of the cut for those very reasons. We do not want material on the beach that doesn't belong on the beach. Those are my notes, so I'll open it up to questions.
Okay. And if you just state who you are and so we know who's asking what.
Matt Palladino, Great Lakes. I just had a question, I guess, about the required completion for the South Beach area that you're discussing with the shorebirds. Looked like it was the end of February.
March 1st is the date you have to be done with the southern 2,000 feet of the South Beach fill.
Okay. Was there any concern of timeline to get all that? I think that was the max amount of pipeline to get there, get all that installed, and get the project awarded.
The addendum is that we're sending out, that we can't rely on yet, is asking for relief from that date so we can get the beach fill built. And so we hope to issue an addendum that changes that date, but right now you have to assume it is going to be March 1st. If the birds set up before you get here, we'll have to cut that part of the project out. Because we can't work during bird season. There's just there's thousands of birds down there. So no abatement's going to keep them away.
Was there any discussions of working on the other end of the window, on whatever date that may be?
Yeah, that is
Run into turtle season.
September 1st, and now the turtles will have arrived and have nested down there. So there's a no-win situation in this part of the beach because of it's just a huge critical wildlife area and activity. So we basically would have to be shut down until November 1st.
Okay.
So we're trying to get it done now.
Hannah Nelson with Weeks Marine. For the no work zone between the central and south areas, are we also not able to transit dozers or yellow equipment anywhere they own down to the mean low water line?
They own to the mean high water line, so you would have to stake out the mean high water line and stay below it, which means you're going to get wet. But we cannot cross those properties with yellow equipment.
Okay.
Correct. They haven't played nice, so.
Anybody else? No? Go ahead.
You know, Rob Ray, Southwest Florida Response, do you guys foresee the timelines being what they are? A single award or likely multiple awards for this project?
Single award.
For the disturbance depth in the bar area, it doesn't specify whether, are we able to put a tip of cutter below the disturbance depth? Because we would typically do our suction depth to, if we're doing a 14.2 section, the bottom suction depth would be at 14.2, putting in the tip of cutter at closer to 15 and a half.
We're going to be asking that clarification in the addendum as well. I don't think it's going to be that deep because we would probably get into some really nasty stuff. But we're trying to see, that was not defined by the original consultant. So we're asking the state to look at that and give us a clarification on that. We will have that in time for the addendum.
Okay.
Yeah, she has one more.
For the material requirements, you discussed talking about picking up the cutter head half a foot after seeing immediate non-compliance on the beach. I have a few questions about that. For something like, so I understand it's not via sand samples on the beach, it's visual by the personnel who will be trained in seeing non-compliance. Are you anticipating any issues with nighttime digging? It's a little bit more difficult to pick up on that.
Correct. There were no issues, compliance issues with the first project. We're not anticipating any, but we have to be diligent and vigilant as best as we can. Obviously, at nighttime, it's going to be almost impossible to tell if you're getting more than 5% shell hash above the number 4 sieve. That we recognize it's not going to happen, but there's also a standard for cleanup, and so you can go for a certain distance in a certain area before you have to really clean up anything. So unless you're blowing and going, I don't think you're going to exceed that in a nighttime pump. It's like 10,000 square feet or something. I forget the exact numbers. I don't have them memorized, but check out the sediment QA/QC plan about remedial action. But I think it's designed so that if you pump during the night and you hit like one pocket of shell hash or something, that we're not going to make you go clean that up. But if you continue for days, that's a different story.
Yeah, understood. in the case that we do pick up the cutter head half a foot, we're seeing rough, we're seeing something, is there a duration or a time or a distance that the cutter moves that we can then set the cutter head back down half a foot? We typically can see, 200 feet of travel distance or half an hour or something like that.
It's not defined by the state, so it all based upon what the quality of the sediment is coming out the pipe. So our suggestion is you raise it up and keep going and see, and then try to go back down again. So it's the standard language we've used in all of our bid documents, and there's enough geotech in the bar area to really characterize it, and it's an ebb shoal system, and so it's a very sandy environment. All the ebb shoals that we've dredged down here, to my knowledge, the only compliance issue we've ever had is shell hash. And again, if you dig for days and you're pumping shell hash, then we're going to have a compliance matter, but we're not expecting, there was very little rock in the cores above depth, but below depth there are solid rock layers, so, which is the geology of Southwest Florida. So.
John Ward, SDR. The question was your intention with it being 21 December, the holidays, your review of references and stuff, what's your expected time frame for awards?
You have the date on
Yeah, the calendar's in the bid documents. I believe it's was it the 28th for a notice of award, and then town council
Something like that.
in January, first meeting in January?
the, yeah, it's 27th or 28th, somewhere around there.
That's more where I was talking the meeting. I know sometimes they're spaced out due to the holidays, not always.
No, not at all. We're going to go right away.
Yeah, we don't have the luxury.
28th, and then hope to get it to council on the 8th of January.
Hey, thank you.
8th of January is council. Yeah, and that's in the calendar and the anticipated schedule.
Yep.
Brandon Cottle with the Future Group. I'm looking at the preliminary plans, so this might have already changed, but on the northern end, looking at the no work zones, the squares, at least on the aerial, are all landward of the landward limit of fill, except for one. I was wondering if that's correct, and if so, how it would affect beach placement on the seaward side of the limit, and then also, are you allowed to have pipeline going through there if it is on the seaward side?
So you're talking about preliminary plans? I'm not sure what you're looking at. There should be contract plans from the website.
Okay, this is what they gave me. I'll double check on that though. But so if it is the closure on the seaward side of the limit of fill, can you run pipeline across there?
So if the no work zone protrudes into the beach fill, we cannot put any pipeline across there. We cannot have dozers, yellow equipment working. So on the north beach fill, there's one lot. That's a no work zone. There's only one.
Okay, so that's it, just that one, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so we got to skip over that one. The central section, there's quite a few more. There's quite a few no work zones that protrude into the permitted beach fill. So we've carved out the beach fill, and you'll see the template gets lowered so that we're not having you pump sand directly onto their properties. But you can't have the pipeline. So you're going to stake out, one of the requirements is you will stake out the no work zones. We'll give you the CAD file. You guys will come in and stake it out, and that's just stay out of there.
So your line, your pipeline's got to be
Just on the seaward side of it.
of the mean high water?
No, in this case, it's the erosion control line. So the erosion control line goes from Bowditch Point to Lanark. And so it's the erosion control line. It's not the current mean high water line of the Gulf. The current mean high water line of the Gulf is seaward of the erosion control line.
Okay.
So no work zone is established at the erosion control line, which is their property line, not the mean high water. So it's dry sandy beach as of today. So let's pray we don't get in storms, as I just said that, between now and the time you start construction. So there are also quite a few no work properties that the erosion control line is actually falls in that emergency berm that we built. In that case, you're just going to tie right into the berm. So.
Will you accept partial acceptance sections in the case of a shutdown for multiple days, whether it's weather or mechanical?
We have done that before. The opportunity exists. It talks about with weather and things. You can even hire a professional land surveyor if we can't get out there in time to do it. So we work with the contractors to accomplish that successfully. So it depends on the circumstances, so.
Anything else? All right.
Has everybody signed in?
Yeah.
No? Please
No.
make sure you sign in because it's mandatory.
Yeah.
And questions are due, what, a week from today, maybe?
Questions are due by the 13th at 4 p.m. And if you think of anything between now and then, like I said, you can email the questions to bids, plural, at fmbgov.com. Get right on that.
Absolutely. This is our #1 priority, so we will answer questions as they come in. We're not going to wait till the 13th, so if you send questions in tomorrow, we'll get you answers by probably Monday or Friday, depending on the extent of the questions. So we really appreciate everybody coming. We wanted to have a mandatory just because of the sensitivity of the time. A lot of you probably haven't worked for the town before, and the no work zones and the truck haul project that's going concurrently. There's a lot of stuff going on in the town for recovery. And so it's being funded by the state of Florida, by FEMA, by the town, by Lee County. And so there's going to be a very complicated schedule of values only because of we have to break out little parts and pieces on who's paying for which yard of sand. And so since we can't color the grains of sand, we have to. So anyway, the bid tab is very straightforward, but your schedule of values will have a little massage to it to make sure FEMA gets their fair share, the county gets their fair share, et cetera. So,
Okay.
sharpen your pencils, the town needs your help. So appreciate your time, everybody.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Yes, thank you.